Okay, thank you. So I'm going to present a lot of birds that I saw over the 2022 from Brazil, Colombia, and Costa Rica. I saw 762 different species over the course of these trips. The Costa Rica trip was not a birding trip, but of course there were lots of birds there, and we had some guides that knew birds. This was our twice postponed wedding anniversary trip from 2020. Then the Colombia trip was a birding trip with Adam Sell of Red Hill Birding, and that was postponed from 2021, all these two from COVID. I thought I'd throw in some birds I saw in Brazil at the tail end of a research meeting I went to. I hired a guide, Renee Santos, for a day, and we looked at some endogenous or endemic birds just to the west of Rio de Janeiro. And then I went on another birding trip with Red Hill Birding with Josh Engel and Adam Sell to Brazil. And the birding guides had local guides as well. So I'll show, you don't have to pay too much attention to this because it will be in the recorded version that we'll put up on the web, but I'm going to include the order, family, genus, and species of each bird. I'm going to include their conservation status if they're less abundant than least concern. If they're least concern, I won't show this. And I'll give you a small little map showing their rough distribution. The abundance of these birds comes courtesy of the International Union for Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources, or IUCN. And they have a website where you can go to their red list and see what the status is of different birds. And at this point, let me also mention, and I'm taking this purple-throated mountain gum as an example. It's shown as least concern, but if you go and look at the population trend, it's decreasing. So a lot of the birds that are probably listed as least concerned, we should still be concerned about. So the first trip was in 2022 was to Costa Rica. We went to two general areas, one north and central of San Jose, Bajos del Toro, and Arenal Volcano. By the way, I don't speak Spanish or Portuguese, so I apologize in advance for butchering any of the language. And then we went further south to the coast. Let me see if I can turn on. Went down to the southwest coast to Drake Bay and Playa Nicueza. So starting up north, as I said, we went to Bajos del Toro. Here are the actual where the lists were that I submitted, and then Arenal Volcano afterwards. This is pretty much what the landscape looks like in this Alajuela province. Very dense forest, lots of waterfalls, lots of rain. We escaped for the most part from much rain. And here's the Arenal volcano, not covered by forest. Pretty impressive though. So I couldn't decide how to present the birds. At one point I was going to present them by color of the rainbow, but that wouldn't be practical because many birds have more than one color. So I went with taxonomic order in each area. Okay, so the first is a great curassow. It's listed as vulnerable. We have a male on the left, and for the purpose of this talk, I'm considering black a color, but you can see it also has this really prominent yellow knob. And then the female has this rufous body with this striped tail and a nice comb on its head. I hope you can hear it. I have a video with vocalization.
No, can't hear it. You need to share the sound.
Okay, so I don't know how to do that offhand, so when it's recorded, you can go and I guess listen online. I'm sorry. So obviously hummingbirds are very prominent in Central America and South America. Here's one that's a pretty common green crown, brilliant, nice purple at the throat, green on the crown and the head and the back. So hummingbirds are the Trochilidae family. They're, as I said, they're native to the Americas with about 361 species and 113 genera. I saw 74 family members. We add up the numbers, a little bit more than 74 because we saw some in different countries. But saw 16 in Costa Rica. The most we saw were 41 in Colombia. Here's a female purple-throated mountain gem, really brilliant orange ventrally and green on the dorsal surface with white behind the eye there. So why purple-throated mountain gem? Because the male has a purple throat and I don't have a good picture to show you. So I took this one from Oscar Ramirez Allen from eBird. Here's a nice violet saberwing with its curved beak and lots of violet on it with the nice white endings to some of the tail feathers. Black-bellied hummingbird, a little bit of rufous in the wings here. It's a russet-naped rail, which we were, I guess, supposed to be surprised to see, but it's a pretty bird, nice coloring. I love this yellow and orange beak with the red eye here, and matching red feet. Used to be considered in the same as the same species as a rail that I'll show later. So everybody, I think, when they go to Central America, wants to see the resplendent quetzal. It's a gorgeous bird. And I was fortunate enough to see one, but I didn't get good pictures of the front. So I took this one from eBird again, from Carlos Echeverria. And you can see this brilliant scarlet belly, the white feathers underneath. This is a near threatened bird. We were also lucky or fortunate to see an ornate hawk eagle, although it has a wide distribution in South America and Central America. We came back from a long walk in the woods. We saw the staff sitting out on a lawn in front of the cafeteria, and they're all staring up at this bird that had perched right on the edge of the woods. We saw a number of trogons. I'm trying to, maybe Emily, there's somebody trying to get in. I can't do it while I'm doing this, and it's in the middle of my pictures. If you can admit them. Anyways, so this is one of many trogons we saw. This is a guarded trogon. And you can see the awesome colors, orange on the belly and some purple up on the back and green up at the throat, the chest, and green in the back. So we saw a lot of toucans. Here is a collared aracari. You know, the bills are always amazing. They're huge. They're serrated like that. It has a sort of a scarlet band around the belly, and talk about a stick pin and yellow eye, scarlet rump. So just a gorgeous bird. And you know, you never get tired of seeing a Kill Bill toucan. At least I would never get tired of seeing it. Awesome colors on its bill, the yellow throat. Anyhow, awesome bird. Moving on to woodpeckers, which are actually in the same order as the toucans. We have the black cheeked woodpecker, and you can see the red on top of its head, the red crown, yellow right in front of that above the beak, yellow red belly. Pretty bird. I really was attracted by this masked Tatara, sorry. So much white, but then accented by some black in the wing, a black mask with red around the eye and red in the beak. And it just happened to be up against the sky on this pale branch. So pretty cool bird. This is the yellow-throated euphonia. Not much to say I don't have much to say about it, except that it's pretty with the yellow belly and the black the rest of the way, except for some white at the tail feathers. This is a common Chlorosphingus. Nice red eye, white behind the eye. Mostly yellow, except when it lifts its wings up, and you can see these axillary feathers, which are very white. I don't know why it's called a common bush tanager. It's not in the tanager family. The Montezuma oripendula was a common bird that we saw up near Arenal. It's actually in the same family as orioles. You can see the really colorful tip of its bill, the white below the eye, the blue in front of it, rufous feathers on the wings, and yellow in the tail. And as you might expect from members of these, they include orioles, they make these hanging basket nests as well. And you can see 40, 50 of these nests in one place, lots of the birds congregating there. Here's an example of a brightly colored flame tanager. And tanagers, as many birds do, have sexual dimorphism, and you can see the female on the right, completely different colors. So I'm going to take a brief stop here and talk about tanagers, the Rhophidae family. They have a neotropical distribution. It's the second largest family of birds. There are 386 species, which represent about 4% of all avian species and 12% of neotropical birds, according to Wikipedia. So I saw 112 members for the first time, which is 29% of them. So examples of these tanagers include things like the red-crested cardinal. So it's not a cardinal, it's a tanager. Honey creepers, flower piercers, even some finches like blue finches and thick-billed sea finches, seed eaters, even a saltator and a grosbeak were thought to be tanagers, but genetic studies show that they are actually tanagers. In fact, out of the 386 species, 106 of them have finch in their name. But what about the not tanagers, or the cardinals? So there are 53 cardinal species. I managed to see 8 of them for the first time, but cardinals that have tanager in the name are like scarlet tanager, summer tanager, paddock tanager, so forth. 39 of them have tanager in the name. The painted bunting is a cardinal, as is the dickcissel. So some more tanagers include the blue-gray tanager, with a wide distribution through northern South America and Central America. The silver-throated tanager. The red-legged honey creeper is a tanager. The red legs are pretty awesome, contrasting with the dark blue and black. The female does not have the bright legs, a little bit reddish, but completely different looking. The green honey creeper, another tanager. Nice yellow on the bill, red eye. Now you might wonder, where's the green in this? You can see a little green ventrally here, but here on this side picture, you can see patches of green. But really, the female green honey creeper is what carries the name, I think. Here's a black and yellow tanager. So then we move down southwest towards the Pacific Ocean, Drake Bay, and Playa Nicuesa. Punta province. There's what it looks like along the shore. You have the jungle, the forest coming right up to the beach. One of the birds that we saw along on an outcropping where there's a brown booby. Here's a young one on the left and an adult on the right, and you can see their distribution pretty much worldwide, centered around the equator. First time I saw a brown booby was in Baltimore a couple of years ago. I don't know how many of you saw that as well. We also went upstream into the Esquinas River, into the mangrove area, and you saw lots of wading birds, including the steamboat blue heron, which we see up in Maryland occasionally, more than occasionally. One bird that we saw up in the mangroves is a boat-billed heron, really large, flat bill, huge eye. Apparently, they're fairly aggressive. More toucans. Here's a fiery-billed aracari, with a bicolored bill. The yellow-throated toucan. I think the only falcon I'm going to show is a laughing falcon that we saw near where we were staying, just up in a tree. We saw these also in more northern Costa Rica as well. One of the more beautiful birds you can see down there would be the scarlet macaw. Fairly large, colors of the rainbow, often flying by in the morning or in the evening, going somewhere. Saw the mangrove cuckoo down there, which I'd seen earlier in Florida, but it's got a pretty wide distribution around the Caribbean, like the spots on the tail and the lower yellow bill. Here's, for obvious reasons, an orange-billed sparrow, a rufous-collared sparrow, here's a scarlet rump tanager. There's a male on the left here. There used to be two different species that have been separated, split, and brought together again, and now they're together again. So, and then here's the female, and quite a difference. Here it is tending to its nest. Very common bird to see is a saffron finch. Comes to a lot of the fruit feeders that people put out. Golden hooded tanager. Okay, in July, we went to Colombia with red-tailed birding. And we started off at Bogota, birded a little bit around the city, and then went further west to the eastern slopes of the Andes. The highest place in that area was Nevado del Ruiz, which was 17,457 feet, and we ended up going about 13,500 feet up that mountain. This is what it looked like on that mountain at 13,500. Lower down at like 4,000 feet, you have the jungle, the rainforest, and here's one of the buses taking people from one place to another through the forest. I like seeing the guans. They're sort of chicken-like, obviously they're in the same order. Very pretty, really intense red eye, red wattle, and matching red feet. Sickle wing guan, found higher elevations in the Andes. More muted red eye and the blue around the face. Nice contrast. There's a dwarf cuckoo. Again, a really impressive red eye, not to mention the orange around the throat and upper chest. More hummingbirds. As I mentioned, we saw a lot of hummingbirds on this trip. There's a white-neck Jacobin. You see the white up here on its neck. It was sort of one of my nemesis birds because it was up in Costa Rica as well, but I never got a picture of it. The long-tailed sylph is pretty striking with this in the male, this long tail feathers, striking iridescent green, I think. Again, a lot of these birds that are coming up will be found at higher elevations in the Andes. Sparkling violet ear. Tourmaline sun angel. The females have sort of a white throat with spotting. The green-tailed train bear, incredibly long tail feathers. This is what we saw at the highest elevation, the Buffy helmet crest. It's a vulnerable status, and it's only located in this one little region. The glowing puff legs. I love the little white on the legs here. We have a male on the left, a female on the right. And this is the feeder there. This is a brilliant bird. I was really blown away by the shining sunbeam. Just awesome color. So here's a sword-billed hummingbird. So obviously the striking thing about it is its beak. It's the only bird with a beak longer than its body. It's I don't know if the angle shows this right, but it's amazing. Fawn-breasted brilliant, cool colors. Rufous-tailed hummingbird, really common hummingbird through Central America and northern South America, northwestern South America. couple more trogons, a masked trogon and a collared trogon, and they have very similar upper bodies. The collared one can have an orange or a red belly. The masked trogon has that red ring around the eye, which the collared doesn't, and then the striping on the tail, on the lower surface of the tail, is different in the two. Here's a mott. The amazing thing is the way that some of the barbs fall off here, leaving these paddle-like things at the end. Other thing I found interesting about these birds and other motts is apparently they build their nests at the end of a long tunnel in the ground. Striking red eye. The puffbird, again, this is in the same order as the toucans and woodpeckers. We have southern emerald toucanet, gray-throated subspecies. Nice white at the base of the bill. The gray-breasted mountain toucan. This was sort of a, I mean, it was a wild bird, but it was would come for some food that they were feeding it at this ranch, and you could throw a grape to it, or we didn't, but the feeder could throw grapes to it, and it would catch the grapes in midair. Crimson mantled woodpecker, nice yellow about the eye, nape and back is red. Nice pretty bird. So here we have the blue-headed parrot. Nice colors as well. Again, a rainbow collection of colors. It likes fruits, but it'll also eat maize and rice, I'm told. So here we have the first of what I'm going to call ant, quote unquote, birds. This is the chestnut-crowned ant pitta. Contains about 68 species. You might consider them like an egg with legs. And in fact, the Latin from their family name comes from the word that means stilts. So we found 42 different ant birds, 11 ant shrikes, 2 ant vireos, 7 ant wrens, 11 ant birds. Those 4 are more closely related to each other than the ant pittas that we also saw. So ant pittas are relatively secretive. They like to be out in the woods, but a person in Ecuador realized that he could train the birds to come to food. He'd feed them every morning, and the ant pitta would come out and get food and then go back into the forest. And so they realized this is a good way to attract visitors, tourists. So this is done all over now. And so we went to this Hacienda El Bosque in Colombia, and at this ranch they had 3 of these ant pittas, 3 different species that they could bring out at certain times in the morning, and they would answer to their names. They named the birds and they would respond to those names. This one is the crescent-faced ant pitta, and it is near threatened. Another bird we saw at that same place was a red-crested cotinga. And at one point it put its crest up. So that was pretty spectacular. This poor ochre-bellied flycatcher flew into a window where we were staying, and it was stunned for a while, and this person was holding it gently in his hands. Eventually it recovered and flew off. I think that's how I got this close up. Common toady flycatchers are common. Black and yellow, some white in the wings. Here's a white-capped dipper. Unlike the American dipper that we have, these dippers don't dive underwater. They'll walk along the streams, they can grab onto rocks and so forth in the streams, but they don't really dive under. The golden-fronted redstart, a warbler. Found in the Andes. This is apparently a less not often seen tanager, a white-capped tanager. Another tanager found in the Andes, the hooded mountain tanager. Another scarlet-bellied mountain tanager. A blue-winged mountain tanager. It can extend to lower elevations. A bay-headed tanager is a particularly striking bird as well. More common, more widespread. Okay, so places that I was fortunate enough to visit in Brazil were around Rio de Janeiro in 2017, where I had a day at the end of a meeting. And then this 2002 trip, 22 trip, where we went up into the northern Pantanal and then down by Foz do Iguaçu, which is sort of where Paraguay, Argentina, and Brazil come together, these huge waterfalls. So here are the close-up of the area to the west of Rio de Janeiro. Renee Santos showed me 154 species there. This was the Atlantic rainforest area. This is pretty much what it looked like. And this rainforest actually extends westward and reaches that Foz do Iguaçu area as well. So what we found were, what I'm showing you are some of the endemics, or pretty close to endemic birds, such as this pin-tailed manakin. And a very sharp tail at the end, but the colors are really cool. Close to the red down the back there. The redneck tanager. Green-headed tanager. Brassy-breasted tanager. I like this brassy color that this bird has. And finally, the Brazilian tanager, striking, brilliant red with these black wings. Again, it's along the coast in the Atlantic rainforest. And one little spot at the Iguaçu Falls, all right, shown by arrow there, that we'll get to in a little bit. So first, let's go up to the northern Pantanal. This is in green here. Yellow and green is the area called the Pantanal, and this box here in the upper right is pretty much the area that where we explored. Here are the locations of the different checklists. We had flown into Cuiabá and first went north, looked at some areas, and then further south. So we'll see the birds from this range. This is sort of what the Pantanal looks like in the not rainy season. And apparently this is much wetter when it rains. A lot of the Pantanal doesn't have so much water. I couldn't quite understand what the sign was about. Pictures only with authorization. I mean, we're out in the middle of nowhere. along the river, Rio Sao Lorenzo. I'm not sure, but it was cool. So I just thought I'd show you an animal. So along the river, we were able to find a number of jaguars. And it turns out that when a jaguar spotted, all the other guides notified the other guides where the jaguars are, and everybody converges on that location. So relatively easy to come across jaguars there, magnificent birds, animals. We had one location where I was literally 10 feet away in the boat from the jaguar. And unfortunately, there was a bigger guy in front of me between the jaguar and me, so, but it didn't happen. So here's another guan, chestnut-bellied guan, which is considered vulnerable. Nice rufous belly and the red wattle and eye. Blue ground dove, fairly common bird. Usually I think it's a little bluer than my picture here, but they have a variety of shades. And here's a squirrel cuckoo, which is also quite abundant, apparently. You can see it hopping from branch to branch, or just walking along the branches a lot. It's a fork-tailed wood nymph. This doesn't show the fork, but you can see it sometimes. A versicolored emerald. It's amazing how many different names they have for hummingbirds. Emerald, gem, mountain gem, so forth. So here's a spotted rail, and nice little red spot at the back of the yellow bill. This bird is found through Central America and parts of South America, but apparently it can be a long distance vagrant, because there is a specimen record from southwestern Pennsylvania sometime in the past. So here's the other wood rail that was once linked in the same species as the other rail above. This is a gray-cowled wood rail. I saw this along the river. This is a tiny little lapwing, pied lapwing, also known as a pied plover, but it's in the lapwing family. And nice red legs, another red around the eye. Just to show you how its size, I managed to get this picture that has the pied lapwing on the lower right, southern lapwing on the left on the ground. Well, they're all on the ground. And then this gigantic jabiru stork with its ring around the red ring around its neck. Just gigantic bird, nests up in trees. So a lot of wattled jacanas, which are a very common bird throughout marshy areas in South America. There's a juvenile on the left, adult on the right. We did see occasional gulls or terns, but not too many. Well, we weren't along the coast in Brazil. Here's one that we saw with large-billed tern, yellowish orange bill. This turned out to be probably my favorite bird, the sunbitter. It's the only species in its family. Nice orange legs, yellow bottom to the bill, red eye. But what's really amazing about it, and I saw this in a picture, so I had to get my own picture of it, is when they fly away or they're startled, they'll flap up their wings, and you can see this pattern in their wings, which I think is just incredible. And it's how it got its name. Various tiger herons were seen, and this is a rufescent tiger heron. Other herons include the whistling heron on the left and the cap heron on the right. Notice the blue about the eyes in both of them. One has the red on the bill. One has a white, pretty much all white body, black cap. Pretty birds. They're in the same order and family. This was kind of an interesting bird, a green ibis, and it's really green. The bill's green, the feathers are green, the legs are green. I guess in poor lighting it would look dark or black, but pretty awesome. Very, very widespread. This is a crane hawk we saw along the river. It has the striped tail feathers, and that little crescent on the wings, bright red legs, long legs, and turns out that the malar joint, the talar joint is double jointed. So it enables it to bend forwards and backwards, enable its feet to get into crevices, cavities better to get at prey. And it turns out that there are, through convergent evolution, a pair of harrier hawks, I can't remember, that
Harrier hawks.
harrier hawk that in Africa have double jointed as well. So those are the only three species known to have this double jointed joint at that talus. So that's the African and Madagascar harrier hawks. Thanks, yeah. This is a blue crown trogon. Nice orange around the eye, red belly, blue chest. Amazonian motmot, one of these ones. You're not seeing the paddles at the end of the tail here, but it does have the paddles at the end. Puffbirds, birds in the same order as the toucans and woodpeckers. There's a white-eared puffbird on the left and a spotback puffbird on the right. Nice colors in the bills and in the head. Here's a rufous-tailed jacamar that sort of looks like a very large, if you saw it in the wild, you think it's a very large hummingbird, but it's not. They're very common. You see them in Central America and South America. Nice, striking bird. Chestnut aerosari, another toucan. Again, the serration in the bill for the colors, and just neat. Again, this one has a red bellied band as well. Chestnut aerosari. Now this Soku toucan is actually the largest of the toucans, and generally they ate fruit, but I can't tell for sure if this guy got some fruit or actually an insect. So move on to the woodpeckers. There's a white woodpecker with a striking yellow highlight around the eye. And the pale crested woodpecker. Not the greatest picture. It was in the sun, bright sun, but crest is pretty pale. This is the orange-winged parrot. Nice colors in the tail feathers. The red iris. Here's the highest macaw. This is the largest parrot in the world. It weighs up to 3.5 pounds, so 1.5 kilograms. It's listed as vulnerable. Peach-fronted parakeet, named for the peach color on the forehead there. And this red and green macaw. These were at some cliffs by the, I don't know how to say it, Bayou de Loifa Falls. I think some of them were actually roosting in the cliffs, some were in the trees, but there are a fair number of them there. We have a large-billed ant wren and a rusty-back ant wren. Pretty large territories. I'm showing the female one here on the left for the large-billed ant wren because of the colorful orange head and breast, and the male is mostly black and white and looks like a lot of other male ant birds or ant wrens. And so if you see it with an orange head like this, then you're pretty sure that it's the large-billed ant wren. Collared crescent chest. Is found in more dry areas. Band-tailed manakin. There's a cattle tyrant, a flycatcher, fairly common in the Atlantic rainforest and other areas in northern South America and central South America. It's a nice red eye. I wanted to show this because it looks like many other flycatchers. The legs are a little longer than normal, but it also has this red. I had a picture of this red crown on it. And, you know, it's cattle tyrant because it can sit on cattle and fly off and catch insects or go to the ground and catch insects. But it's not just always on cattle. Here are two that are on a capybara, so a rodent order. So anything that moves, maybe. Two caciques, yellow rumped and red rumped caciques, fairly overlapping range. Fairly similar, except for the obviously yellow versus red. So the peak in the red rump is yellower than the yellow rump. An oriole, orangeback troupial. Another in the oriole family, scarlet-headed blackbird. And back to the tanagers with a cinnamon tanager on the left and a magpie tanager on the right with a prominent yellow eye. Nice contrasting white and black on this bird. Here we have those two cardinals I mentioned before, yellow-billed cardinal and red-crested cardinals, which aren't cardinals, but tanagers. And if you go to Birds of the World or whatever and look for a map, you'll get these ones with the purple showing in central or eastern Brazil, but they have actually been they have successfully established themselves in a number of places such as Hawaii or Puerto Rico. A blue neck tanager and a burnished buff tanager. You know, a lot of these birds are located in areas that are not connected with one another, and although they will name multiple subspecies in these areas, it may turn out in the future when further analyses are done that they're actually different species. There's a coal-crested finch. Supposedly it's a small, supposedly it's a rare and poorly understood bird that seen in the savannas of central Brazil. We saw this in the Pantanal, in a dry sort of elevated area, as similar to the location where we saw this bluefinch, also a tanager. Sometimes it's called a yellow-billed bluefinch as well. Here's the Guira tanager, nice black mask surrounded by that yellow and an orange below. Okay, so last place we visited was Costa Rica. As I mentioned before, it's large waterfalls. The waterfalls are actually down here between Brazil and Argentina, but where Paraguay is just off to the left here. So we were able to spend a day and go into Paraguay, and then we spent a day at the falls in Argentina as well. So when we were there, they were having the second largest amount of rain and water amounts cascade over the falls. So the first day, there were certain places you couldn't go because the water was so high, but by the next day, the water levels had dropped, and we were able to go on to some of the paths that were now lower or above the water. So here's an endangered black-fronted piping yuan that was near the falls. Pretty bird, the red wattle, red eye, white crown. Here's one of my favorite birds of the trip, the Guira cuckoo. It reminds me of a roadrunner, and in fact, roadrunners and this Guira cuckoo and cuckoos are in the same family. And one morning, got up, went outside. I went outside the hotel, and I found all these cuckoos lined up in the cool morning, I guess, sharing heat, reminding me of those birds on the Pixar movie, Birds on a Wire. In Argentina, saw this swallow-tailed hummingbird. Saw this blackish rail, not to be confused with black rail, blackish rail in Paraguay. Another rail was the rufous-sided crake. Not the best picture, but nice little green on the back end of the bill, and then the rufous there on the side there. We have a black-throated trogon, although it's more green to me, or dark green. Yellow-fronted woodpecker, also in Argentina, with the yellow around the eye, the orange throat, red chest and belly. We have a blue-nape chlorofonia. You see the blue with the nape here, green head, yellow belly. So that's it.